Hi, I'm Calico Spritz. I'm a burlesque performer. You asked for it. It's here. We're gonna make pasties today. I had so much fun making these, and I can't wait to show you what I remembered about this process as I went through it. I wanna make sure you know right now, this is not a tutorial for how all burlesque performers make their pasties. This is how I like to make mine. I will talk about a few other methods that people use along the way, just for some inspiration, for some variation. And also, please remember, this is your time to be creative and express yourself and make yourself look the way you want to be perceived. So let's get started. So the base of these pasties are going to be made out of buckram. Buckram is a very rigid linen or cotton, sometimes a linen cotton blend fabric. You'll see when we get started, it holds its shape really, really well. And buckram is traditionally used in hat making. So if you've gotten a hat before and it's bent into a fun shape, or I guess look at any hat that you might have laying around. If it's not made of felt, it might be made of buckram. We're going to use buckram today because I love to sew my pasties. There's something so tactile about that experience, and I really like working with a natural fiber. Speaking of sewing, we're going to need a needle and thread. We're going to need some little baby scissors, and we're going to need a pattern, which I'll show you how to make. Here's a bonus. I love this thimble. I have tried so many thimbles. I've tried metal thimbles. I've tried plastic thimbles. I've tried rubber thimbles. I've tried other leather thimbles. This one, clover, coin thimble, size medium. I can put it on my ring finger and I can put it on my pointer finger. It's leather, but it's got this little thing in there. A coin, it doesn't look like a coin to me, but I get it. That has the same grooves as a traditional metal thimble. So I can actually push things through fabric without piercing through the leather. So I just wanted to say that because I'm really excited about this. This is Clover. This is not sponsored. I just love this thimble. I looked for a thimble that I liked for years, and I haven't lost this one yet. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I'm wearing a shirt that says rats. Okay, no, the real elephant in the room. What if you don't want to sew pasties together yourself, but you want to decorate some? There are plenty of people on the internet who sell pasty backings. I look on Etsy. You can find people on Instagram. You can find people all over the internet who make them out of different things. You might want to make your pasties out of something like craft foam from Michaels and glue them together. You might want to get 3D printed pasty backings that perfectly fit your shape, and that's available. It's available to you. Say you're really strapped for cash, but you have a local library with a 3D printer. Find a pattern for pasties and go print it at your local library and have a very fun conversation with the librarian who's working there. Okay, let's get started. I learned how to make pasties from the Burlesque Handbook by headmistress Jo Weldon, and there is a whole section on pasty making. This is the pattern I traced, and you can see I did not resize it at all. This just happened to be the perfect size for me. If you need something that's bigger, go bigger. If you need something smaller, go smaller. It's really that easy. So again, I just traced that circle, and then I made sure that I traced that little piece of pie here so it looks like Pac-Man, because we're gonna fold this up and it's gonna make a little baby cone shape. That's like the classic pasty shape that you're probably used to. You just gotta make sure that you don't forget that part. This book is awesome because it has a history of why we use pasties in burlesque, but also it has some additional patterns. So that's a heart-shaped one, and then we've got all of these here. If I wanted to make something like this, I would have to size it up, but with some love, some patience, some tracing paper, I can do that. The first thing I'm gonna do is trace my pattern onto the buckram. I'm just using a pencil. I'm not gonna be precious about it. Boom, there it is. I like to use these teeny tiny baby scissors on buckram when I'm working because I like that I can really easily control the details. If I were to use my bigger pair of scissors, I think I'd probably make a mistake. The buckram is so thin that it really allows the weight of the pasty to come from whatever it is I'm going to put on top of it. I mentioned that I learned how to make pasties from Jo Weldon's book, but I will deviate a little bit from her process. She likes to put the piece of fabric that you're going to use down first, and then glue the buckram directly to the fabric, and then cut the pattern out from there. I like to do it this way so that if for some reason or another I don't want a piece of fabric on top, I can just use the buckram, but also so that I can use a stretch fabric over it and cut back on a little bit of the bulk that comes in when you're trying to make that conical shape. If I were to fold this over and lay this top layer over the bottom one, it would be a layer of glue and a layer of fabric sitting on top rather than simply creating a flush seam here. And then I can use my stretch piece of fabric to go all over this cone shape and simply sew it along the edges. Don't be too intimidated by having to pin this together. We're going to take care of that with one step. You see, I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to have about a 1/4 inch of room because that's the shape of cone that I like. If you needed something pointier, just fold it over a little bit more, but I'm going to start right here from the inside so that my knot starts there. And I'm going to tack that through, and then boom, look at that. It stays together so long as I keep that thread tight so that I can just sew it together. All right, now that I've got one row of stitching done, you can see that it has a little bit of a cone shape when it's sitting flat. But I want to give it a little bit of extra strength, so I'm going to do another layer of stitching over this. And I'm going to create tiny little X's. And this for me just makes it feel like it's more secure and it'll keep its shape when I'm going in with fabric and rhinestones afterward. I've gone ahead and tied it off in the back here. I'm going to get stitching on my second one. I'm really glad I'm making this video because I had to remember how I do this part of the process, so I already covered one up. Here's what I do. I take a little bit of fabric like this. It's a 4-way stretch. This is just from an old cotton t-shirt. 4-way stretch means that when I stretch it this way, it's stretchy, and when I stretch it this way, it's stretchy, okay? This is going to become important. Because I didn't choose to lay down my fabric first and glue it to the buckram, I need to make sure that this goes over smooth. Essentially what that entails for me is I start my stitch like normal. And then as I go, I slightly pull the fabric to make sure that it's taut. Not too taut so that it's buckling the fabric underneath it, but taut enough so that it's going to take the form of the pasty as it's in that cone shape. That's why I like to use a 4-way stretch fabric like this, because it's one layer of fabric. It's not overlapping anywhere. You can see it is coming up a little bit on the edges where I have it tacked. But as I start adding glue and rhinestones and glitter, all that good stuff, it's going to make it even flatter against the buckram. Let me show you how to do it. I start this process by picking a point on the fabric, and then I just do a really simple straight stitch all the way around. And now you can see I keep flipping it over to just check that the fabric is nice and tight. Again, not too tight because I don't want things to buckle under the pressure of that stretch fabric. And I do it all the way around. The home stretch right here is what I'm really worried about, because that's where a fold could come in. But I made sure that there was no fold. I tied it off, I cut it out, and then look, I've got 2 little pasties covered in black fabric. We are ready for the fun stuff. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the exciting part where I'm going to add a little bit of glitz and glam to these. And that's going to come in the form of rhinestones for me. So for this, I'm going to glue on these rhinestones with E6000's fabrifuse. This is so great because it's low odor, and it's also really good for stretch fabrics. I use this in a lot of projects, but I particularly like this for gluing rhinestones onto pasties, because when I'm using a stretch fabric as the base, I want to make sure that it's going to stick, and this isn't going to go anywhere. In addition to that, for tools that I'm going to need, I've got one of these little wax pencils. I've got a pencil sharpener as well, just in case I need to resharpen the tip here. And then I've got a few trays that I can lay my rhinestones out in. I'm going to be using black rhinestones today, and I've got various sizes here from teeny tiny to small to medium to big. Okay, the professional names. ask for them at your local store. And then I've got these hematite colored ones. I love to pair these with a black rhinestone because it just helps add a little bit of variation. And then these are the ones I'm really excited about. I just got these at the shop, and some of them are in black and some of them are in kind of a smoky see-through. And I like to call these orzo shaped because they look like little orzo pastas. They have little holes in them, so I could sew them on if I wanted to, but I am going to glue them on. I am going to also fill the holes with more rhinestones. I know. Covering a pasty is really just up to you. Some people use fabric to cover the top like I have. Some people use craft foam. There are craft foams at places like Michael's and wherever else you can find that nowadays that have glitter already built into it. There's ones that have patterns printed onto them, and you can use that as a template for where to put your rhinestones. For me, I'm going to have to just kind of come up with the design and see if it works as I go. You also might not even want to put fabric on it. The last pasties I made were just raw buckram with rhinestones glued right on top, and that worked because it was a lighter color pasty. With something like a black pasty, I want to make sure that if there's anything showing through underneath, it's the same color as the rhinestones. That's kind of what I would recommend if you were making a pasty of any color, is to do the base in the same color that you're going to do the rhinestones as. But you don't need to follow my advice. You could make something really cool using opposing colors. I might try that. I think what I'm probably going to start doing is mapping out where I want these to go. And I also want to make sure that I'm not starting a design that I can't finish because I don't have enough of these funky shapes. I thought I was going to be able to give you a really comprehensive explanation as to how I was doing this, but it turned out it was more chaotic than I thought it would be. So I just started gluing. Again, I made sure that I had enough of those larger rhinestones that I could make a second pasty with them. And then I went in alternating colors between that hematite and the black stones, filling in spots, making sure I was using some that were bigger, some that were smaller. And then I went in with those tiny guys and put them on the larger rhinestones where the holes were to cover up the holes. And this is how it looks. I have never made a pasty so beautiful, if I do say so myself. Now I'm going to let my pasties rest on this little tailor's, I want to say ham, but it's not a ham. What is this called? Somebody tell me. And then I'll go ahead and coat the backs tomorrow. It's the next day. I'm using these tassels that were attached to some other pasties. They fell off at one point, and I wanted to change the method in which I put them on. So I attached this little lobster claw clasp to the end, and then I'm going to just put a jump ring in the very center of the pasty where there are some rhinestones missing. That way I can choose to put the tassel on or take it off depending on what costume that I'm wearing. Some costumes that are a little tighter, it might not make sense for me to wear a tassel, but I still want the option to have a little fun tassel to play with. So now I've got the tassels attached to both pasties. They're looking absolutely gorgeous, but we've got some loose threads and some raw buckram, so we've got to coat them in E6000. That way we have something to attach our pasty tape to. Opening up the window, making sure my fan is on so we're ventilated. It's time to coat the back of these pasties, and for that I'm going to use my E6000 and a new addition, this teeny tiny little silicone brush. And now I have to say I did think this brush was going to be bigger when I bought it, but it's for lipstick. So that's what we're gonna go with. We're gonna see if it works, and then maybe I invest in a larger brush. And because we're gonna be using E6000, I'm gonna pop my little mask on. I don't have my respirator. I don't know where it is. So I'm gonna take as much precaution as I can right now, okay? And we also need to take these clips off. And I'm taking these off because I want them to lay flat on their little cozies while they're drying. They're flying away. They're flying away. Okay, the process of covering these in E6000 for me is pretty simple. I just like to glob a bunch of glue on top, like this. And then close the glue because this glue loves to just keep coming out, and then spread it around. Wow, okay, this spatula is amazing. Absolutely shout out to the person in my TikTok comments who suggested that I use this. This layer that I just laid down is going to be for the very edges because there's still some open seams here and I want to try to close them up. Open seams meaning the really, really edges of the fabric where I have simply tacked down the thread. Kind of want to flap open, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to close them up. I'm going to call it on that one. Sequester her to the window. Okay, and that's kind of all she wrote. I'm going to let these dry, ideally overnight, and then they're ready to put on, which you won't be seeing. I'm gonna have to find a creative way to show you what they look like. I think I've got it. Here they are in all of their glitzy glory. I love the way these turned out. I love them so much. I performed with them last night and they were so awesome. I felt like I was shooting torpedoes out of my chest. I will let your imagination do the work on that one. We're going to talk about some things that went well and some things that could have gone better. Things that went well. I have never used these little lobster claw clasps to apply a tassel, and it went well. I love that now they're kind of versatile. I love that now I can have a tassel if I want it and I want to do some tassel stuff, and I also have the option to just have something simple here. I don't mind that there's like a little ring sticking out. Who's going to be looking at that? Another thing that went well was these orzo shaped rhinestones. I really, really love the look of them. This is exactly how I hope these would turn out, and having the little extra rhinestones on it really helps not only to cover up the little holes, but to give it a little bit more glitz. Now, if I were going to do this exact project again and use these same rhinestones, I think that I would sew them on. It would be quite a bit more tedious, but I think what I would probably do is glue them on and then reinforce them before I put the E6000 on the back. Of course, I could reinforce them now, but I would have to really push through that E6000. And I think it would just help me feel a little bit more comfortable that they're going to stay on. Some of them, they're not necessarily lifting, but I have a little bit of anxiety about it. Another thing is these teeny tiny little itty bitty baby rhinestones that I put over the holes. Some of them have already come off. Some of them specifically around where the tassels are. And that's not surprising to me at all. I actually don't think I would do that differently. I think that I just need to come to terms with the fact that if I'm going to be performing in these, the teeny tiny itty bitty baby rhinestones are going to come off. I'm just going to have to put new ones on, and that's going to be okay. If you make a pair of pasties because of this video, I would love to see them, wouldn't you? Yes. Please let me know. Message me, send me a picture. I'm a geek for all things burlesque, and I want my eyeballs on that, okay? Speaking of geek for all things burlesque, if that sounds like you might want to subscribe, because this is a fun, sparkly little corner of the internet to be on, and we can see each other a little bit more often. If you like this video, tell Daddy YouTube, okay? That's how he knows this is a good place to be. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.